reacquire what was theirs, was lost through this process. Once that's done, they first want to review and analyze what's there. But their desire thereafter, recognizing the historical significance of these documents, would be to have an institution like the Schomburg to house these documents and do what Howard has indicated they would do, and to make them available for study, for research, or make them accessible to scholars, to students, because they know that their father's contribution to the world is a great one. And there's no better way to have it explained than through his own words. And so that's what their ultimate druthers are.
But you know, others would say, yes, it's your dad, but he doesn't just belong to you. He belongs to posterity. He belongs to us.
He belongs first to them, Gil, and then to us. And
are there partitions in the ownership? The personal dimension of the papers, what was going on in the family, as opposed to the political dimension of his life?
Certainly there are. And to the extent that there are things in the collection that are extremely personal, or in the interpretation of the family personal, then it is likely that we would exclude that from the overall collection. But those things that represent the type of historical circumstances that the world needs to become knowledgeable of, then that certainly will be a part of what's provided to the Schomburg.
So as you can see it, what are the steps that lay ahead?
Well, right now we still have a legal battle ahead of us, and people should understand that right now, although the auction has been postponed, it has just been postponed. And there's still some legal issues involved with respect to that chain of title. The court has been asked to make a determination as to whether or not there are, in fact, breaks in the links of that chain, and whether the breaks in the links of that chain will cause the initial sale to have been void.
Optimistically hoping that this will be resolved, what would be the next step? To sit down with the family and go through the papers and sort of partition, as we were
discussing,
the personal from the public?
Yes. That would be the first step.
That's a painstaking job.
Yes, it is. But it's a job that all of the sisters are now prepared to take upon themselves, and recognizing that now the eyes of the world are upon them with respect to this, and everyone waits with eager anticipation for this material to be available. They will be cognizant of that. But again, I have to say, first, it is the family that must come together and deal with what this really means. This is their connection, their personal connection to their father, and in large measure to their mother. And then they will go through that process first, examine the documents first, and then make a determination as to what is going to be made available to the rest of the world.
Mr. Dotson, you're not the only entity that is really interested in acquiring this collection. Without itemizing by name, but can you give me and my audience a larger or understanding of the number of competitors that there are?
Gil, just before Howard answers that question, if I could just say, no one, and that includes the Schomburg, will acquire the collection. The family will acquire the collection.
Understood.
We're talking about housing it, just so that's understood.
Okay. Having been properly corrected, how many competitors do you have?
I honestly don't know. I know that it's been tremendous interest in the research and scholarly and archival community, interest in having the collections, having the collection in their respective institutional settings, and those interests are both here in New York, in some locations in the South, and some to the north of us.
Are they universally coming from academia, or are there commercial entities that are bidding?
I've heard some expressed interest by commercial entities, particularly publishers who had an interest in possibly acquiring rights for publication. I've heard that. I have not been able to confirm any of that.
All right. Why don't we take another break, and we'll be back with much more right after this. Pretty complicated scenario, but as far as the family is concerned, it's not just a matter of getting it back in their possession. It's not just a matter of depositing it someplace for safekeeping, but it's also to arrange other partitions or reserving the ownership no matter where it goes, so that it can pursue other ends. Is that a fair paraphrase?
That's a fair paraphrase. I think Howard mentioned that there were some commercial entities, and we're aware of, by the way, all of the entities, commercial and otherwise, that have been vying for this collection, attempting to get the auction house from taking it from the 21 lots that are now being offered for sale to one lot that one entity could bid on and therefore get all of the property. But the journey takes us to the family ultimately, and no matter what happens to the property, the family will always reserve its copyright, its proprietary interest in the intellectual property that is what's in the paper, not so much the paper itself. Exactly. But the family will first seek to possess and to own again that which is theirs, and then we'll look to all of the other steps necessary in terms of where to deposit it and to what extent it will grant licenses for publication.
What are your comments about this entire scenario that you've been struggling through?
Well, my first comment is that as bizarre and really problematic as it appears to be, the good news is that in this particular instance, the material was not destroyed. In far too many instances, material that is going to these kind of storage facilities and warehouses dealing with black history have been sold off and have never been seen again, or simply destroyed by the storage facility. And we have a very, very bad pattern, I think, within the African American community of depositing stuff like that. And no one knows where it is. If something happens to the one who did the deposit, it's gone. And so we need to be much more vigilant about preserving and protecting that which is part of our historical legacy.
Gentlemen, anybody who has been following and aware of the story of Malcolm X is aware that there's been just a history of severe trauma, going back to Malcolm's father, to Malcolm's life himself, to Betty, and the grandchild of Malcolm, and many other things that we really don't know about. This is a deeply emotional story that many of us can gain a lot from understanding. Would you say? Would you agree?
I would say so, yes, and I would add that anyone who truly understands Malcolm's contribution to our present-day existence should also understand that they should support the family, and that means both emotionally and, right now, financially, in terms of their need to gather money in order to be able to reacquire, if they have to, the documents involved. And they would want to be able to do that without any human toll. And the participation of those who understand, recognize, and appreciate Malcolm's contribution and the sacrifice of his family in order to make that contribution will do so.
One other thing I wanted to ask you, Mr. Dodson, and that is about government records. The FBI, Malcolm had not escaped their lands. Has there been any pursuit of those documents?
Yes, the Freedom of Information Act has been used in a number of different ways to try to gain access to those materials. We have some of them at the center. We don't have the full corpus. It's, as I understand it now, something close to 14,000 pages of stuff.
My.
If not more than that. And so that's a body of material. They claim that it doesn't exist anymore, but there's a body of material in New York City in the New York Police Department. It's also of great significance.
I'd like to thank you both for your participation. We're out of time.
Thank you, Gil.
But not out of interest. We will stay on this story.